Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, an almanac of garden history, literature, and small botanical joys. I'm Jennifer Ebling, and today is May 6th. All things are difficult before they're easy, and I think about that every May. Because right now, the garden is all effort. You're hauling bags of soil, you're staking things, tidying up, you're buying the plants and dreaming the dreams. There is so much to do, and nothing feels easy right now. It's a lot of work. And that's the right feeling for this part of the season. The easy comes later, or should I say, easier. It actually does get easier, but you don't get there without this part: the watching, the waiting, the second guessing, and the exhaustion. So if your garden looks like a construction zone this morning, that's May. And yes, it is not easy. Here's today's garden history. It was on this day in 1742 that Jean Senebier was born in Geneva, a city built on calm water and careful theology. As a young man, John trained as a pastor, and by his early 30s, he became the chief librarian of the Republic of Geneva, where he settled into a quiet life of books and public duty. Across the city, a wealthy naturalist named Charles Bonnet had spent years studying leaves submerged in water. He noticed that they produced bubbles, tiny, silver, and mysterious, but he couldn't identify the gas. When Charles's vision started to go, he needed someone with patience, with method, and with a librarian's obsession for detail. So he created a competition on what he called the art of observing. When Jean entered and won the grand prize, Charles found his protege, and he began mentoring Jean by giving him the question that would define his life. What were those bubbles? That quest for the answer meant Jean's days split in two. In the mornings, he worked in the library, cataloging manuscripts and helping students find volumes in the stacks. By midday, he was chasing light, moving glass jars filled with water and submerged leaves to windows and terraces, wherever the sun was the strongest. Then he watched and waited for the bubbles to appear. In his work, Jean became a botanical detective, and the bubbles were clues that revealed everything he needed to know. When Jean took away the carbon dioxide, the bubbles stopped. When he doubled it, the bubbles doubled too. After 3 long decades of searching, Jean eventually found his answer. And after all that time, it's fitting that one of Jean's most famous quotes is, "Observation and experiment are two sisters who help each other." But he also knew the work was not easy and demanded both stamina and courage. Jean once wrote to Bonnet with admiration for his mentorship, saying, "It was in studying you that I learned how to read from nature and to paint her, but in studying you, I despaired forever of resembling you. You have mastered the art of seeing well." The scientific truths Jean discovered are canon today. Plants are not made of soil. They're made of air and light, sunshine turned to life. And while we exhale carbon dioxide, plants inhale it as food. In turn, plants breathe out oxygen, and we inhale it to stay alive. Plants and people, we need each other to live. In 1791, Jean wrote poetically about man's perfect symbiotic relationship with the natural world. He wrote, "I see my blood form in a spike of wheat, and wood in winter gives back the heat, fire, and light it has stolen from the sun." As for Jean, After all that time staring into bright, sunlit water and squinting to count all those tiny silver bubbles, came with a price. It cost him his vision. Jean worried about the loss of sight for other naturalists and even warned them to take breaks when they worked to avoid eye strain. Speaking from his own experience, he advised, "When the senses are fatigued, they become unfaithful." In his old age, Jean didn't leave his desk, but he needed help getting to it. And from that post, he dictated his work to the assistants in the library. That's how, essentially, in the dark, Jean finished his 5-volume masterpiece on plant life. He died on the last day of October, 1809. He was 67. It's especially poignant now to go back to a time when Jean was in the middle of it all, counting tiny bubbles and trying to figure out what it all meant. He wrote about the experience in a book called The Art of Observing. He wrote, "The observer regards nature as a book, in which it is necessary to attempt to read the characters with rigor, without presuming to imagine what signification they ought ultimately to have." I think about those words every time I'm confused or unsure about what to do in the garden. If nature is a book, then when I'm stuck, I just need to spend a little more time reading her. And it was on this day in 1889 that the German botanist Heinrich Gustav Reichenbach died in Hamburg, Germany. He was 66 years old. From the time he was a little boy, Heinrich grew up in the Dresden Botanical Garden because his father, Heinrich Sr., was the garden's director. As a boy, he learned how to draw plants by hand, and he discovered how to see the architecture inside a petal and learned how to spy the story inside a dried specimen. By his late 30s, Heinrich had followed in his father's footsteps and worked at the botanical gardens in Hamburg, where he was the expert plant hunters trusted to name orchids. When crates of orchids arrived from all over the world, Heinrich felt like a boy again. And when he wrote about orchids, his descriptions were vivid and relatable. On the Moriana, an extraordinary variety of the Locusta orchid, Heinrich described it this way: green sepals, green petals, green lip, green callus, green ovary, green bract, green sheath, green peduncle, green bulbs, green leaves, just as green as a green grasshopper or the dress of some Viennese ladies. Over 25 years, Heinrich named more orchids than almost anyone of his time and helped create the frenzy known as the orchid craze. He named each orchid like he would his own child, often naming them to honor his friends who collected the plants and nearly died finding them. He also named the plants after wealthy orchid lovers who built glass cathedrals to house them. Still, sometimes he named them after one of their many stunning features. Heinrich's closest ally was the great orchid collector Friedrich Sander. Friedrich sent his best finds to Heinrich first, and in return, Heinrich wrote such beautiful descriptions that he helped Friedrich prosper by fueling the very craze that made them both famous. When Heinrich learned that the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew had appointed a new orchid expert, he took it as a serious blow. Robert Allen Rolfe was a self-taught former garden boy who had risen through the ranks. While Heinrich had spent his entire life drawing, promoting, and naming orchids, it felt like a complete and utter dismissal. When Heinrich died on this day in 1889, he left his entire collection, over 70,000 specimens, to the Natural History Museum in Vienna, with one single condition. The entire collection had to remain sealed from the world for 25 years. In his will, he wrote, "In the event of the Vienna institution declining to observe these conditions, the collection falls under the same conditions to the botanical gardens at Uppsala. And should the last mentioned institution decline the legacy, then to the Grayen Herbarium in Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And if declined by that institution, then to the Royal Botanic Garden at Paris, but always under the same conditions of being sealed up for 25 years in order that the inevitable destruction of the costly collection resulting from the present craze for orchids may be avoided." This was the choice of a man who loved something too much to simply hand it over to people he felt weren't worthy. But when the seals were finally broken at the Imperial Hofmuseum in May of 1914, the orchid craze was over and the world was on the brink of war. That's when a botanist named Friedrich Krenslin from the Natural History Museum was sent to catalog the collection and spent years trying to decode Heinrich's private shorthand. Friedrich's biggest job was comparing Heinrich's records against 25 years of independent work, since botany had moved on after Heinrich died. And an unexpected benefit of Friedrich's audit is that it made orchid classification even better. Heinrich's collection somehow survived both world wars, and because the specimens had been locked away for a quarter of a century, they are unusually well preserved compared to many other collections from the late 1800s. Ultimately, when Heinrich Gustav Reichenbach locked that door, he ended up opening it wider than he ever intended. In today's Unearthed Words, we hear from the Belgian playwright and essayist Maurice Maeterlinck, who died on this day, May 6th, in 1949. Maurice grew up in Ghent, a city of dark water and cold stone in northern Belgium. As a young man, Maurice became one of the most celebrated playwrights in Europe and won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1911. Maurice once wrote, "Can we conceive what humanity would be if it did not know the flowers?" For Maurice, that question wasn't rhetorical. It lived in everything he did. And his deep appreciation for beauty and the natural world explains the joy and mystery Maurice found in a greenhouse. For years, Maurice kept bees and studied flowers with the same devotion he once gave to plays. In 1907, he published a book called The Intelligence of Flowers. He wrote, "We shall see that the flower sets man a prodigious example of insubmission, courage, perseverance, and ingenuity." When Maurice looked at flowers, he didn't see something delicate. He saw something that grew where it shouldn't be able to, pushed through soil, stone, drought, and shade, and adapted constantly, bending, turning, and reaching for light. A flower never complains or gives up. Maurice went on to say that if we applied just half of the same effort to the things that crush us, such as pain, old age, and death, the world would be a different place. For much of his adult life, Maurice lived in a restored Norman abbey at St. Vendry, where he wrote in silence every morning in a cold stone room and then spent his afternoons with his bees. Of them, he wrote, "Bees will not work except in darkness. Thought will not work except in silence. Neither will virtue work except in secrecy." And he also wrote, "If the bee disappeared off the face of the earth, man would have only 4 years left to live. Later in life, Maurice wrote a play called The Blue Bird. In it, two children search for an ethereal blue bird and the source of all happiness. Their travels take them far away, but then eventually they find the blue bird in the most unexpected place, back at home. Similarly, Maurice spent a lifetime searching for answers, yet he spent his final years at a villa above the Mediterranean Sea, surrounded by lavender and salt-crusted cypress trees. In the end, I think Maurice knew where the answers lived all along. I sometimes find myself thinking about the blue bird and Maurice with his flowers and bees, when I wonder if there's something else I should be doing with my life instead of spending so much time in the garden. But I think, like Maurice, I already know the answer in my heart. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, The Gardens of William Morris by Jill, Duchess of Hamilton, Penny Hart, and John Simmons. This book is part of International Gardens Week here on The Daily Gardener, and that means that all of this week's book recommendations feature a journey through gardens beyond our borders, exploring how culture, climate, and history shape landscapes around the world. William Morris was a British designer, poet, and founder of the arts and crafts movement. He believed that beauty and usefulness were inseparable. William once wrote, "I know a little garden close, set thick with lily and red rose, where I would wander, if I might, from dewy dawn to dewy night." The authors open a window into the private gardens connected to William's life, Red House, Kelmscott Manor, and the places where climbing roses, dense borders, and fruit trees weren't merely decoration. They were a green philosophy that William could walk through and gather from. The book includes over 50 examples of William's designs, shown alongside the real plants that inspired them. For William Morris, daily life always began in the garden. And finally, here's something sweet to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day in 1970 that the American botanist, author, and museum director Ellen Schultz Quinlan died in San Antonio, Texas. She was 82 years old. Ellen grew up on a farm in Saginaw, Michigan, the daughter of German immigrants. She lost her mother young and left Michigan at 29 for a teaching job in Texas. She never went back. In San Antonio, Ellen became a high school science teacher who loved wildflowers so much that she wrote a field guide listing 500 different species. In the preface, Ellen described the Texas landscape this way: "Texas is a land of flowers. From the time the first warm breath of spring awakens sleeping buds in the south until the last purple aster is nipped by the frost in the north, the state is a vast garden of color and beauty." As a young teacher, Ellen wanted her students to see that garden, so she helped organize a fundraiser, selling bluebonnets, until the class had raised $5,000, enough to buy a natural history collection that became the foundation of the Witt Museum, which opened in 1926 with Ellen as its director. She ran that museum for 34 years. In 1927, Ellen married Roy Quinlan, an ornithologist who loved birds the way she loved wildflowers. On weekends, they disappeared into the Texas brush together. When the Depression hit, Ellen worked at the Witt for $1 a year. Her operating budget was almost nothing. To keep the museum alive, Ellen cleverly built a reptile garden. She paid ranchers a dime a pound for live rattlesnakes and charged visitors 10 cents to see them. And the garden paid for itself in 1 week. Ellen wasn't just moved by nature. She felt it was a divine connection. Ellen once wrote, "How often, in the early morning light, we pause in the out-of-doors, in the natural surroundings of our garden, and feel close to life and to our Creator." When Ellen retired in 1960, the city of San Antonio honored her with her own day. She had proven herself a daughter of Texas. Today, the Witt Museum is still standing, and Ellen's original collection is still inside. And yes, there are still live snakes to draw the crowds. As we close the show today, remember, things are always difficult before they're easy. It's just part of the deal with May. So here are some ideas on how to deal with it. Work in the morning when it's cooler, or maybe only work in 1 or 2 hour shifts, whatever's right for you. Bring a fan outside and have it blow on you while you work, because mosquitoes aren't good flyers. Use sunscreen and drink plenty of water. Putting together a strategy for how you work outside will keep you from burning out and burning up. And both are important, because there's a whole season ahead of us before the garden goes back to sleep. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.